Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Toby Birch, who is a senior manager, investment manager at Gower Financial Services. We're going to have a look at the second quarter of 2026 and then look at other factors impacting world markets. And as ever, all opinions are personal and no investment advice is being given. Good morning, Mr. Birch.
Hello, Jenny. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And shall we start off with a review of the markets? Because I was
Mhm.
quite, um, I thought everything was going to take a big dip as a result of Iran, but everything seems to be holding up fairly well.
It's
Your
been a
favourite,
yes.
of course, is the FTSE 250. How's that done?
Well, it's kind of the UK has probably been a bit behind other markets. You flip back to March, which seems like a very long time ago. We'd had this big sell-off ahead of um, the developments the last few months. So obviously, the oil price went up, stock markets got hit, and it felt pretty scary. But had a really big rebound. I mean, US technology has been the big one, up about 27% on the quarter. Other markets like Europe, Japan, about 12, 15%. So the UK is up about 4% over the quarter. So it's been a bit of a laggard, but nothing disastrous particularly.
Bit better than zero point 0.1 in terms of economic growth.
There's
So
just
but you basically mentioned Standard and Poor. The Japanese one, the Nikkei, that seems to be motoring on again, doesn't it?
it does. You always got to weigh up the sort of weakness of the yen
Yeah.
against the market going up. But net, that's still a good quarter overall. And so yeah, there's definitely no complaints. I mean, I sort of mark my degree of success with investors when I get no complaints. For me, that's it. Nonsense, thank you, but I don't care. Just like
Okay,
no
so we
complaints.
should rephrase it. All opinions are personal. No investment advice is being given, and complaints are not accepted.
Except when I deserve it. No.
What looking at Europe? What about the DAX? That's the German one, isn't it?
So Europe overall is up about 12%, so a bit less than um, Japan, but yeah, still pretty strong. When you get some risk on moves, then Europe does pretty well.
Yeah. And the energy prices, Brent crude down to, well, when we checked these out on Friday, the 3rd of July,
Mm.
Brent crude was trading at $72, which is a bit
Yeah,
different to where it was, earlier on this year.
yeah, we've had a big collapse in the oil price of about, I think sterling terms, is about 26% on the quarter. I know it shot up a lot before, but that's been very encouraging. This is why markets have kicked off. But if you look at the long-term structure of the oil price, you see that a year out, the price hadn't changed much. It was just a short-term spot price that
Yeah,
shot up,
yeah.
and that's settling down a bit. So, kind of, there's a wisdom of crowds in markets, and the what they were saying is that the Iranian situation would be short-term. Again, I'm always nervous about saying that because things can kick off any time. But for now, touch wood, it seems to have settled down.
And obviously they're getting enough oil out, aren't they, to make the market stick to a price of just over 70.
Yeah, I mean, you also got to bear in mind that a lot of reserves were used up, not just America but China as well. So
Yeah,
with prices lower, there will be more demand coming through. And what you find is that central, a bit like central banks, strategic government policies are very good at timing. So the oil price is low, they'll start buying again. When the gold price is down, they start buying again. So they're not stupid.
yeah. So we will watch with interest. Currency sterling against the dollar. How's that faring?
Well, there has been some weakness in the pound because of what's going on politically with our God knows how many prime ministers we've had in the last decade. It's six or seven, but um, yeah, and it's still a honeymoon period.
Yeah,
But what we are seeing in the background is that speculators are ramping up their short positions on sterling, so they're expecting some weakness. So once you get a bit more colour on Burnham's economic policies, then you might find there'll be a further weakening in the pound, which it's a bit nerve wracking. I'm sure we'll come on to it later, but uh, yeah, there's a lot going against the UK at the moment.
And the interest rates virtually at a stop, presumably as a result of the panic over Iran.
Hmm.
Do you
Yeah,
see them coming down?
well, initially there had been a complete flip. So previously we had been expecting rate cuts throughout this year, but with the Iran situation, the market flipped to expecting several rate rises, and that's now been pushed out to, particularly in the case of America, that they're expecting maybe a rate rise in October, possibly, but it's very much off the table for the time being, because that again is a positive for stock and bond markets for that matter.
Inflation rate stuck at 2.8. Doesn't sound a lot, but it's quite a bit,
Mm.
isn't it? Over and above the target of 2.
Yeah, this 2% target, it's almost like a random figure, because things change over time, and there's no particular reason why. Yeah, it should be 2%. It's just a line in the sand for central banks. So I think they've got to stick to something that's as good a figure as any. But you're right, the kind of the sticky core inflation is really in the 3% region, both in Britain and America. And I don't think there's much that's going to change that. In the States, a lot of the makeup of the index is based on living costs, rental is a big thing, and that only changes with long-term bond yields in the States. It's a bit of a different animal, but
Yeah.
net is still the same. You've got to expect a good 3% inflation pretty much permanently now.
And I guess you're looking at it as it's an acceptable rate, which is a lot
Well,
better
it's
than we saw in the 1980s.
very much so. In the 70s, I remember all these incredible inflation rates. I mean, there's a bit of a Goldilocks thing of getting it just right. So
Yeah.
the inflation helps to burn off government debt levels in real terms. At the same time, we don't want to carrying away like in 1980, where interest rates had to shoot up to counter the inflation effect. So it is very much a case of just trying to keep the public happy, keep the bond markets happy as well, which is half the battle.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I didn't include it in the list because it's only happened today, but I see that ITV is selling off a lump of itself to Sky,
Yep.
and also EasyJet is going to an American capital venture.
Yeah, I
Any
saw
comments
that.
on that?
Yeah, I mean these firms. It's a bit like when private equity takes something over. Um, by the time they buy it off another private equity firm, all the costs have been squeezed out. The accounts have been, what's the polite way of putting it? So plumped up.
Manipulated.
Yeah, you can say that. So you just think, what is the value in doing this? And borrowing costs aren't any cheaper. But yeah, fair play to anyone who offloads these companies. I mean, I know the UK is a big target from Americans because obviously sterling's weak, and you've got some great quality companies despite the politics. So yeah, I can see why these buyouts are happening. But if you're buying here, what's going to be the where you're going to get the value from? But yeah, that's their job.
I mean, but based on what you were saying about the strength of the American economy, etc., we need to bear in mind that Sky is now owned by Comcast, which is a
Mhm.
very huge media company
Yeah,
in the state. So I suppose that taking on ITV must make sense.
yeah. I think so. If it's a strategic thing, it's not so much the price because they'll pay a premium over the actual stock market price anyway. So they've got differing reasons for doing this thing. It's not all just you say it's not about money, but in some cases there's a strategic aspect as well.
Yeah. But of course, inevitably with this sort of situation, you get duplication, don't you? Do you
Yeah,
still need ITN if you've got Sky News?
exactly. So this is the way the world's going. Of yeah, more and more is owned by fewer and fewer,
Yeah.
and it's all about cost cutting. Even before we talk about artificial intelligence. So this is probably why the jobs market is so subdued everywhere. The American payroll figures last week were quite weak, and the participation rate dropped as well. So it's all pointing to less and less demand for labour and more cost cutting. So it's very frustrating for the younger generation. There's
It, it,
so
it,
little work around.
yeah, it's scary in my opinion because
Yeah.
I suppose are we sort of preparing ourselves for this revolution whereby nobody works?
Well, this is a very good point. And if you're on the conspiratorial wing of wing of things, this is very much where we're going, where people are paid a basic, like a universal income to if they're not if there's no function for someone, then they're given a lifestyle which is livable, probably not terribly luxurious, but
Yeah,
you just live and you get paid for. And that's kind of for some people it's a utopia. Others politically might say, well, it's pretty dysfunctional. I'm not sure exactly where it stands. They've got my sort of traditional values of the classics of puritanical upbringing. You must work to get reward.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, I struggle with it. But at the same
Yeah.
time, is it better than having riots on the streets? And maybe people can be more productive or artistic if they've got that particular bent to do better things. I just don't know yet.
But I mean, if, for example, you're on a basic state allowance, let's call it that, if
Yeah,
the whole thing got to that point, it would affect the housing market, wouldn't it? Because people wouldn't be able to get a mortgage.
that's right. And again, you'd end up um, living under the and sort of the benefit of the state. So it'd be like in Russia, everyone had a standard apartment,
Yeah.
standard living. It all points towards mediocrity, but again, the more you depend on the government, the more you're compliant, and the more they can impose their will and agenda. And we can talk about this later, but there are some serious agenda seekers out there who want
Mm.
to control the way we live. Talk about 15-minute cities, like Oxford's going this way, and controlling your movement and your finances and what you do. To me, it's just that's very much against the grain, and I'll always push back against that
Back,
invasion.
it's backdoor communism, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
And we all know that that worked really well in Russia, didn't it?
Again and again, people keep trying it, and say this time is different. It's a
we
new
was,
kind of communism.
but if you haven't read it, read Animal Farm.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very good it's a cartoon version as well. I see on Sky regularly. It
Yeah,
never
yeah,
gets
yeah,
old.
yeah, yeah. Now, Mr. Burnham, assuming that he becomes Prime Minister, and I mean, this seems to be the biggest fix I've ever seen, doesn't appear to understand or know much about the bond markets.
Mm. It
So,
seems to be a common theme. Yeah,
can we talk about the 30-year gilt? Is that
yeah,
the general measure these days?
yeah. If you think of the bond market yield, which is, the long-term interest rate as the thermometer on the economy, what we now have is a state where the UK's yield is higher than countries like Greece. They used to call them pigs, like Portugal, Greece, and
Yeah.
Spain, rather than fairly. But the UK yield, or looks like the temperature on the thermometer, is higher than elsewhere. So it is an indication that the investors lack faith in the government and and the UK generally. Again, it's a bit unfair because there's some great equities and
Yeah.
companies in the UK, but overall, when you're looking at the UK, you got a couple of what I call like pressure release valves. One's the bond market where the yields shoot up as your first sign of trouble, and the other is sterling. And so whenever the UK is in trouble, the pound starts to devalue. And if you remember back to 1976, it's this combination of events that triggered a crisis at the time, where you had the bond market falling apart, sterling crisis, and there was a flow of money out of the reserves. So it's a worrying trend. We're not there yet, but it's
But
got the ingredients for
this is
trouble.
when Healy had to go cap in hand to the IMF.
That's right, at the World Bank.
So,
Yeah,
how close are we to that at the moment?
I mean it, it's on the one hand, I think um, any sort of Western government can keep printing money, and if the bond yields get too high, the central bank can just stop buying the bonds and mopping them up. So it's kind of money printing by the back door. So the Treasury issues bonds to raise money, the central bank buys them, and it's all kind of kept. It's don't scare the kids type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and that can only go on for a certain amount of time because sterling will always eventually crack under that situation. And it's difficult. It's different under like quantitative easing. You could keep that under wraps. So technically, the UK can't go insolvent, but you could get a combination, like I mentioned, of the pound devaluing, yields shooting up, and just a recession generally. Where, as you mentioned before, growth is pretty anemic. So we're not there yet. And I actually tried looking up what would constitute an IMF bailout or what would trigger it. And there's nothing really on AI or the internet about what the requirements are. I think you have to ask for help, and
Yeah.
well, I call it help. It's massive austerity, and so you only know when you get there when you need the bailout.
But in November 2025, I read that the total debt was about 2.9 trillion.
Yeah, it's the percentage of debt as a proportion of the economy. So strange enough, the UK is one of the better examples. In Europe, only Germany's got a lower what's called debt to GDP ratio.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just that it's not so much where you are now with the debt; it's how you look at things going out. And the issue with the UK is that our annual overspend is worse than elsewhere. So we are close to sort of these trigger points. But these things can often go on longer than you think.
Yeah.
And you kick the can down the road. And again, relative to other countries, it's just a case of which is the least bad, really.
Okay. So there we are on that one. Do you think they'll have to increase taxation? Burnham has gone on the record to say that he'd honour the manifesto of
Mm.
Starmer's, but having said that, they got round the national insurance for employers, didn't they?
Yeah, I think there's all what called weasel words in politics, where
Yeah.
you kind of you should twist the wording or the definitions to do what you want. And of course, this mansion tax is it's going to end up being a maisonette tax.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
So poor middle class is going to be battered again.
yeah, and obviously the wealth gets transferred into welfare. I mean, I think that's the thing that everyone's
Exactly.
upset about, basically.
Yeah, it's just so unfair because the people who do the most work get the least out,
Yeah.
and you just see it being utterly wasted. It's just, and they could talk about public services, but it's really, and talk about communism by the back door. Effectively, the government and related services are becoming the biggest employers and the biggest expenditures. It's a
Mm.
point where less and less people are paying more and more. I mean, they're talking about squeezing the rich like Healy used to do. I mean, make the pip squeak, as
The
the old phrase.
pipsqueak, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but the 1%, wealthiest 1% already pay a third of the income tax base. And so the more you try and whack them, again, it's like we had a Guernsey in the 60s and 70s. The more you have, the higher the tax rate goes, the more people leave,
Mm.
and the very people who are paying the most just going to disappear. So it's kind of it's a vicious circle, and the real way to get around this um, is to deregulate and promote growth. But for left wing politicians, this is just you may as well tell them to change religion because their ideology is to tax more, tax
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
Right, you've got the same parallel issue in the Channel Islands where if you just you know have less government and less regulation and just allow the private sector to do a bit more, not go off the rails or go crazy, but the mentality of reducing control is just they just won't do it.
They're all the same, aren't they, really? I mean, the Channel Islands, the UK, everywhere you see more and more government control coming in. Um,
Exactly.
I think we're going to learn fairly shortly as to whether or not Madame Le Pen is going to be eligible for the presidential um, election in France. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, get the. I think that they'll try and anyone who's got these. I use reform with a small r rather than
Yeah,
capital R.
yeah, yeah. Rather
Anyone
than the
that has an
party.
agenda to cut not so much public spending, but cut government because there's a difference between public spending and government. They will be um, attacked by the left and the media
Yeah,
because they want you to believe there's no way out of it. It's not like Margaret Thatcher was condemned by hundreds of economists at the time for her views, which worked fantastically in the 80s. So it's very hard for anyone trying to reform without being utterly slated and being subject
yeah,
to massive propaganda.
yeah,
And that's the nature of who we're working against.
yeah, yeah. What about North Sea oil? They don't seem to be too keen to issue new licenses, but it's so obvious, isn't it? As
I've got my
Basil
head on my hands
Fawlty
here,
said,
Bruce.
the specialist subject, I won't put in the expletive, bleep,
Mm.
bleep, obvious.
Yeah, I mean, what we do is they say, "Oh, we won't extract fossil fuels, but we'll let the Norwegians do it and pay
Yeah, we
them
buy it off them. Yeah. I mean, how
from the
stupid.
same oil basin." And again, it's about ideology. If you're like, if you push back against this agenda, you're called a denier of one form or another. And it is like religion. You just can't argue the toss about decarbonisation and how ridiculous the theories are and how poor the science is behind this. And I know I've only got a basic science degree, but when I see the way the figures are manipulated and
Mm.
um, who pays the grants to make these scientific publications, it drives you mad. And any scientist who stands up to this is again pilloried by their so-called peers because they're the ones who got the snouts in the trough with the research
Yeah,
grants.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Anyone disagreeing is utterly demonized.
yeah.
But yeah,
Good friend of mine, Chris Gibson Smith, several years ago came up with a theory that basically it was a natural process, not particularly man-made, global warming, and I think he converted me, quite honestly.
they have these hysterical headlines about warmest day ever. It's like goodness sake, it's just since like 200-year record is barely a second on a 24-hour clock of
Absolutely,
climate history.
absolutely, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's a human arrogance to say that we have an effect on natural cycles. And
yeah,
again, this is partly where the science is so like pseudo-scientific because they're trying to come up with these straight lines of X is proportional to Y, temperature is proportional to carbon, and it's just you're taking a tiny section of change, but the real beauty of nature is this long-term cyclicality, a bit like stock markets.
yeah,
And if you try and draw straight lines where they don't exist, it's ridiculous, and it's because it's someone somewhere is benefiting from this kind of this propaganda.
yeah. Mainly China in terms of selling the solar panels,
And
and they're
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 very
the
happy to
biggest polluters.
they'll take advantage of our sort of idiotic ideology and sell us stuff we think we need. It again as you get older, your fuse gets shorter and shorter.
Yeah, well, you're a lot younger than me, mate. I mean, I've got a non-existent fuse. I arc rather than fuse. But there we are. Let's get back to some personalities, Toby. Neil Woodford,
Yeah.
darling of the fund managers, wasn't he, for a while? And he's gone to disaster, currently being sued by the FCA. What was that all about?
So he's a big sort of black sheep of the fund management industry because um, he was taking a lot of money as fees, and yet his funds were collapsing because he had all these small liquid companies, and because money was being withdrawn, all the good stuff got sold, and all the junk was left behind. And this is a very common feature of fund failures. But he's been doing a blog which is subscription based, and so the UK regulator, the Financial Conduct Authority, has quite rightly said that this is investment advice
Yeah.
because it's paid for, and so they're suing him. So I personally agree. It shouldn't be doing
Who
that.
was he with when he was at his zenith?
So that was uh, that was part of it. The Invesco
Yeah.
brand.
Yeah.
We had the famous funds. In fact, they just looking back at it, so I think their office was in Henley on Thames,
Right.
and they
Okay.
used to have speed bumps on the road to the office. He got them removed because his Porsche would be damaged. It's this kind
Grounding
of
out.
vanity. So, to be fair, it's not him. Perpetual, that's one. So
Yeah.
it's not just him; it's the organisation that panders to the cult of personality. And again, I've worked with people like this where they become superstars, and they throw everything at them because while while the music's playing, everyone's dancing, and when it stops, some people are left standing. So it's
Absolutely.
as much a corporate failure as it is an individual one.
Yeah. 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 Now let's get on to Elon Musk, the first trillionaire. But if you're a bit worried about it, folks, that's the equivalent to 750 billion, isn't it? Because he's a dollar trillionaire.
It's not there. It's only that useless continental currency.
Born in 1971, um, very rich family apparently, but that didn't stop him from doing his own thing.
I mean, I mean, people criticize Trump as well because he came from money, but it's very easy. Again, if you've worked with um, family offices or with big banks, it's very easy to completely blow these funds
Yeah,
within 1 or 2 generations. So
yeah,
even just keep hold of it and not lose it is quite an achievement. Um, and so in the case of Musk, it's it's quite something to not just have that wealth, but to grow it the way he has and have some what seem like crazy ideas which he just brings to fruition.
mm.
So it's kind of it's a bit of a Marmite character. And you may have seen on TV there've been some documentaries about him and all these children he's having trying to repopulate the planet.
Well, that's right. Yeah,
Fascinating
he's well
character.
into the teens on the children, isn't he?
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
numbers. Yeah,
Quite incredible. So again, with all these personalities, whatever you think, he's definitely changing things, and it's not all sweetness and light. It's like with the SpaceX
yeah.
IPO. I noticed that a lot of debt from other companies was put on the company before the listing took place. So you're not actually buying rockets. You're buying the down to
Bits,
earth debt
bits
from
of
other
bits of
mistakes.
Tesla.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah. But
Um, yeah.
they get away with it, these people, don't they, from that
And
point
of
of view.
course, the exchanges, talking about institutional bias, the NASDAQ changed their listing rules to let SpaceX onto the index, which in turn means that the exchange traded funds have to buy the stock.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's one rule for um, them and another for everyone else who has to go through like a seasoning process to prove they're worthy of being on an exchange.
Almost sounds as if it's being run by FIFA.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't thought
Let's
of that
have.
parallel. Yeah.
Should say, folks, this was the day after England actually won in Mexico,
Uh,
so that was good
I've got
if
it
you're into
recorded, so
football.
I'll
Yeah,
watch that
yeah,
later.
yeah, yeah. SpaceX is interesting, though, isn't it? Really, because in the past, NASA used to put these things together with components supplied by Lockheed and other organisations, whereas now he's effectively offering a private enterprise space facility. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just that there are commercial aspects, and probably one of the reasons it's worked is that as a more of a private enterprise. I mean, he's been through a lot of failures on the way with the rockets,
Yeah.
which must have, they must have brought him to the edge of going under with the amount he spent. So fair play, because these people are taking the risks, and when they get a reward, everyone goes, "Oh, look, how unfair is that?" But actually, they've put everything on the line to make it work. So it's a fair play, and also got things like Starlink is people who use it say they wouldn't go back to fiber. So
Mm.
fair play is you need these characters to break the mold and do things which you know thought weren't possible. And we've, again, part of the success of capitalism is about the failures and what doesn't work. All you see is the survival aspect. You don't see
Yeah.
the sort of dinosaurs that they got involved with.
Yeah. And for I expect a lot of the audience knows that Starlink is the space satellite broadband facility.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Have you got it?
well, I haven't. I've got a colleague who lives in the UK in Yorkshire
Yeah.
who swears by it, and
Ideal there, I should think,
you know,
in terms of
particularly with
being,
it's a very overpriced here, as you know, because you've got the monopolies
yeah.
or oligopolies, I should say. So there will be a point where I think I'll be tempted to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, the other thing that we need to bear in mind with Elon Musk is good old, well, I think it's called X Corp now. It was Twitter, wasn't it? Is that correct?
Yeah, this is again. You probably I'm probably labelled a right wing fascist now because I'm an old fashioned conservative. But
Join the club.
um, you know, the Twitter was so left wing. I bantered it years ago because it just made my blood boil. I think it exists really to sort of stoke people up. And
Yeah,
what governments want to do is they want people to hate each other and be divided so that they can either impose their will or in the worst case impose martial law. That they want hatred amongst us, and all the media platforms were going that same sort of globalist leftist approach. And Twitter pushed back, and you might hate it, in which case don't use it. And this is
yeah, that's right.
the whole idea of free choice.
Yeah,
And a lot of people want to take away that free choice. So no matter its faults, and I'm sure Grok, his AI version has got its faults. Don't use it if you don't like it.
yeah. We've always got the on-off switch.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
some people don't want that anymore.
that's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's no one anywhere near his league in terms of wealth, is there?
I mean, you do have some of the, obviously legacy, um,
Yeah,
you know, businesses like I don't say legacy, but Amazon and others who have substantial amounts. But this kind of money, you do wonder. I mean, he's done the commercial stuff. What's he going to do, which is more philanthropic? Because it's like a Victorian sort of legacy or life cycle that people who've done well often try and give something back and do something for the public good. So I just wonder what
yeah, yeah.
that might be.
Because Americans are very good at this, aren't they?
Yes, very much so. Them.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm
But,
thinking of Warren Buffett and the dreaded Bill Gates, who I understand Warren Buffett's severed the connection there recently.
yeah, I mean, I'm not a big Gates fan personally. I mean, some
No,
people use philanthropy, or yeah, some people do it because philanthropy is about giving back.
yeah,
Other people use it like Gates and hoping to get sued, but to further earnings of
yeah,
companies
yeah,
that it's
yeah.
foundation in.
It's all part of the marketing, isn't it?
Exactly, and the
Almost.
foundations are founded
Yeah,
to avoid capital gains tax because
yeah,
obviously they put their shares in there, and then they abuse the system, which is it's very common. So there's always a yin and yang, where generally good people will want to help out. Others will just again that with these sort of sociopathic personalities, no money's ever enough, no possessions ever big enough, and just keep going. So yeah, it's part of the same thing.
Is that a gloomy note to end on or an optimistic note?
I think it's human nature, and you always get
Okay.
these extremes of either side. And the trick is to find a happy medium. It's a bit like politics, always swing,
Yeah,
left and right. It's
yeah,
very hard to have a neutral ground
yeah,
where everyone just cracks on. But overall, I think stock market wise, things are pretty rosy, and there's a few sort of niggling noises in the background saying that things are a bit worrying. And also got these big IPOs yet to come over the course of the summer, which will suck in a lot of capital. So I think it's always good to be wary about markets when they're doing well and to have that kind of slight sour note.
yeah.
And you see in the fear and greed index that things are actually on the fear score, which is a positive thing. And it sounds contradictory. So overall, I'm cautiously positive, but would expect some kind of push, pull back, before the year end for sure.
But as ever, you've summed it up perfectly. So
Thank
many,
you.
many thanks for that. See you later on in the year, hopefully.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Have a
Thanks,
good
Toby.
summer.
Really appreciate your time. Take
Thank
care.
you. Thanks for
Cheers.
questions.